Welcome back. Logan Burns alongside Sarah French. Again, we're interrupting your regular program. We have a special news report for you. This is the breaking news in the Cheshire home invasion case.
The jury has sentenced Stephen Hayes to death on all 6 capital felony counts. Of course, Hayes was convicted on 16 of 17 counts in the deadly 2007 Cheshire home invasion. Of those were the 6 capital felonies, which all carry the death penalty. So, as we're learning, prosecutors rested their case in the penalty phase of the Stephen Hayes trial after calling just one witness, a court clerk who testified about Hayes' long criminal record.
Now, the prosecutor told jurors that considering the death penalty that Hayes was a career criminal whose past led to the murders of Jennifer Hawk Pettit and her 2 daughters, Haley and Michaela. Lawyers trying to keep Stephen Hayes off of death row focused on the second defendant primarily, Joshua Komisarjevsky, as well as evidence that Hayes was a good worker, that he cared for his family, and that he was driven by a drug addiction.
Lawyers for Hayes introduced a letter in which co-defendant Joshua Komisarjevsky called himself a brazen master burglar whose life is, quote, defined by risk. In that letter to the author of a book about the crime, Komisarjevsky described his technique and the thrill of breaking into homes as people slept. The same scenario, prosecutors say, unfolded in the Pettit home. Prosecutors had objected that the writings are full of fantasies and say both men were equally responsible.
So again, 6 of the 16 counts Hayes was convicted on are capital felonies. He was sentenced to death on all 6 of those counts. Those 6 counts are, if we take a look at these, it's the murder and a sexually assaulted person, Jennifer Hawk Pettit, the murder of 2 or more persons, the murder of a person under 16, that would be Michaela Pettit. She was just 11 years old at the time. And then 3 are for the murder of a kidnapped person. One was Jennifer Hawk Pettit, the other one for Haley and also Michaela. So there's a lot that goes into deciding the life and death of each count. It's not as simple as just asking the jury, does this man deserve to die? There's an entire list of questions and pamphlets. The jurors take a look at the aggravating factors, they weigh those against the mitigating circumstances, and that's how they come to a determination as to whether he should live or die. So we're talking to Andrew Julian a little bit about what exactly they have to do. We have the jury questionnaires here, and it's a thick pamphlet, and that's probably why, I'm only assuming, that it took 3 days. They had to go through each one of these painstakingly.
Absolutely. They have a long questionnaire, like you said, on each of the 6 capital counts, and what they have to decide first is, were there any what they call statutory mitigating factors? And those are issues like, was he aware of what the person was doing? They speak to a person's mental capacity to appreciate what was going on. If the jury finds that there's any statutory mitigating factors, that short-circuits the process on that particular count, and it's a life sentence. If they don't find those, they move on to the aggravating factors. Was this a heinous, cruel crime? Was it committed in a heinous way? So we know in this case, as many of us saw, that they found there were aggravating factors. Then you move on to step 3, which is what we call the non-statutory mitigating factors. Those are things like his childhood, his upbringing, his drug addiction. We heard a lot about his background, how he was led to a life of crime because he didn't have opportunities and he had trouble, and he tried to hold down jobs but kept slipping back into crime. Then if you do find there were some non-statutory mitigating factors, you then get to step 4 of the process, where you weigh the aggravating against the mitigating. If aggravating outweighs mitigating, it's death. If mitigating outweighs aggravating, it's life. And they go through that on each of the 6 counts. So it's really not surprising that it took 4 days. We're in the 4th day here to get to this point, because it is complicated.
Andrew, let's talk about the death penalty and how it's affected the state of Connecticut.
Yeah, we know from the most recent Quinnipiac poll that about 3/4 of people in Connecticut would like to see Stephen Hayes get the death penalty, even though only about 60% or 62% favor the death penalty. So we know that even people who are against the death penalty would like to see Stephen Hayes get it. So this is a case that was so gripping and that was so heinous, and the particular way in which these crimes were committed was so cruel that it really touched people in a profound way. I know that as people were reading the stories from court as we were covering the trial, it brought up a lot of the emotion that people had 3 years ago, where they really felt the fear inside. This touched people in a very deep and meaningful way.
So we're covering the Stephen Hayes sentenced to death right now. We're going to send you back to regular programming as we await for the Pettit and Hawk families to come out and speak to the press.
Yeah, we'll be sitting up here. When they come out, we're going to break back in, so we've got it covered for you. Stay with us. We'll be back just as soon as they come out and they talk to us.